Meg Ryan is remembering her late friend and coworker, Rob Reiner. Rain was pounding Montecito the moment the black car drove up to those tall iron gates. Not the kind of rain that makes things fresh, but the kind that makes the sky feel heavy. For 3 whole weeks, the world had been crazy with headlines, flashing screens, and talk shows playing the same scary footage over and over. But inside her quiet living room, Meg Ryan stayed completely still, wrapped in silence. No phone calls, no statements, no social media posts. Paparazzi saw her here and there, walking her dog, her face hidden behind big dark sunglasses. They guessed the usual things: sadness, regret, guilt. They were wrong. The truth was much deeper. The actress posted a black and white photo of the two of them dancing and smiling, writing, "Oh, how we will miss this man. Thank you, Rob and Michelle, for the way you believe in true love, in fairy tales, and in laughter." For 10 years, Meg had been carrying something she never talked about, something that started the moment the story about Rob Reiner first came out. And it came from Rob himself, a man she didn't just admire, but trusted like family. He had once leaned in during a raw, honest moment and told her something so heavy it stuck like a scar. She tried to bury it, tried to pretend it never happened, but today, running away wasn't a choice anymore. As she sat down in a tall velvet chair, the cameras dimmed the lights. Soft, close, personal, no Hollywood shine left to hide behind. Back in the late 80s, Meg was all glow and charm, the face of romance, the woman who made audiences believe in happy endings. Now she looked different, like someone who had watched the ground crack under her feet and never quite got better. She wrapped both hands around a ceramic mug, not drinking, just holding it tight, like the warmth might stop the shaking that came vahums, rom deep inside her. She lifted her head slowly. Her blue eyes were sharp, but the edges were red from too many nights without sleep. No smile, no sparkle, just truth. "I need to say this," she began, her voice low and rough, missing that familiar softness people remembered. "Because if I keep pretending that perfect Hollywood family still exists, then I'm part of what happened to him. I'm part of the lie that broke him." Her chest rose hard as she took a shaky breath. People thought they knew Rob Reiner, the baseball cap, the beard, that big laugh that filled a room. They saw the man behind all those feel-good movies, the one who made everything seem warmer and safer. But they didn't see what happened when the camera turned off. They didn't feel the tension that had been quietly building for years between Rob and Michelle. It sat there thick and unspoken like fog that never lifted. Meg paused, eyes looking to the rain-streaked window. "You have to understand," she whispered. "Rob wasn't just a director to me." When their film was finished, he didn't just shake her hand and move on. He and Michelle pulled her into their world, treated her like family. For a long time, they were proof that real love could exist in an industry built on make-believe. But about 5 years ago, something changed. The energy changed. It felt wrong. Meg remembered it clearly. A simple Tuesday night dinner at their place, ordinary on the surface, but underneath everything felt off. And once you feel that, you can't unfeel it. Nothing fancy, no cameras, no setup, just dinner. But the second Meg stepped inside, she felt it instantly. The air was thick, buzzing, like the echo of an argument that had just ended. Not loud, not explosive, cold, controlled, like something underneath had already cracked wide open. Even now, she shifted in her chair, setting the mug down with a sharp click that cut through the quiet studio. "Nick was there," she said carefully, her voice tightening. Meg added, "I have to believe that their story will not end with this impossible tragedy, that some good may come, some awareness raised. I don't know, but my guess is that they would want that to be hopeful and humane, to be something that brings us all to a greater understanding of one another and to some peace. And I need to be very clear when I say this. I know he's facing serious charges. I know he's their son, but the Nick I saw that night wasn't the kid I'd watched grow up. Her eyes darkened. There was something missing in him. His eyes were blank, cold, like the light had been switched off. She paused, fingers trembling slightly. It scared me. They all sat around the table, pretending everything was normal. Rob being Rob, sweet, gentle, trying to keep the mood light. He told a small dad joke about the pasta, nothing serious, just trying to smooth things over. But Nick didn't laugh. Instead, he slammed his fist down on the table. Plates rattled, wine tipped. The room froze. That wasn't awkward silence. That was fear. The kind where nobody breathes because they don't know what comes next. Meg leaned forward, hands clasped so tight her knuckles turned white. That moment never left me, she admitted. I looked at Michelle. Her voice softened. Michelle, who was always the strong one, the anchor. She shook her head. She didn't yell. She didn't say a word. She flinched. Meg swallowed hard. She looked down at her plate and whispered, I'm sorry, Nick. The words still hung heavy, even years later. Then she lifted her eyes, and then I looked at Rob. Her voice dropped. What I saw in his eyes that night, I'll never forget it. It wasn't anger, it wasn't frustration, it was fear. Real ear, the kind you can't fake. He looked at me for just 1 second, Meg said, voice trembling but steady. And in that look, he was begging me not to say anything, begging me to keep pretending. So she did. She ate the pasta, sipped the wine, smiled, kept the conversation moving while her heart pounded inside her chest like it was trying to escape. She left early. Rob walked her to the car. He hugged her tight, too tight, and he didn't let go right away. Then he whispered, He's just going through a rough patch, Meg. We just have to love him through it. Love fixes everything. Meg shook her head slowly. That was Rob's biggest mistake. He truly believed love could solve anything, that it was armor, that it could protect his family no matter what came at them. But for someone like Nick in that fragile, unstable state, love wasn't protection. It turned into leverage, something that could be twisted and used. This wasn't about one bad night. It was about a slow unraveling, a quiet collapse nobody wanted to face. Over the next year, the phone calls from Rob changed. They used to be full of energy, ideas, excitement. Then they became rare. And when he did call, his voice sounded hollow. He stopped talking about movies, Meg said, her voice cracking. Rob Reiner, the man who lived for cinema, gone from his own conversations. Instead, he started asking strange questions. Do you have a security system you trust? Do you think people can really change? Questions that came out of nowhere. He sounded like someone trapped inside his own home. Rob and Michelle started making quiet moves, selling things, shifting money, preparing. Aaron Sorkin mentioned bits of it once, Meg said softly. But even he didn't know how deep it went. She found out later they'd been paying off Nick's debts. Not small stuff, serious debts, the kind you never want attached to your name. They kept trying to save him. One more check, one more favor. Meg and Rob worked together several times throughout their careers, including in 1989 when Rob directed Meg in When Harry Met Sally, and later on as co-stars in the 1993 romance Sleepless in Seattle. Rob Reiner was 78. One more desperate fix. The day it hit the news, Meg was in a taxi in New York. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Not ringing, buzzing over and over. Then a message from Billy Crystal. Just 3 words. They're gone. At first, she didn't understand. Gone where? Then she opened the link. Aerial footage, flashing lights, tape around the house. Her voice dropped. I couldn't breathe. She wiped her face and looked straight ahead. And this is the part I have to live with. Tears welled up. I was devastated. I was shattered, but I wasn't shocked. She paused. The studio stayed silent. A producer reached out with a tissue. Meg waved it away. No, she said quietly. This needs to stay real. Then she looked straight into the camera. The media keeps calling it sudden. She leaned forward, voice firm. Everyone keeps talking about mental health, stress, pressure, and sure, maybe some of that plays a role. She shook her head. But what nobody wants to say out loud is the manipulation, the control, the way love and guilt got twisted into a cage. Rob and Michelle weren't free. They were trapped, not by walls, but by coercive control inside their own home. Their peace was gone. Their independence was fading, bit by bit. Meg looked down before continuing. About 3 months ago, I tried to visit. I was in L.A., and something in my gut told me to stop by. When she arrived, the gate was shut tight. She buzzed. Michelle answered. Her breath caught slightly. Her voice? He didn't sound like her. Flat, careful, almost rehearsed. She said, Meg, we love you, but today isn't a good day. Meg's hand trembled. And then I heard shouting in the background. I heard glass breaking. She paused. I drove away. Her voice cracked, frustration spilling through. I drove away because I didn't want to embarrass them. I wanted to respect their space. She swallowed hard. That choice will stay with me forever. I should have done something. I should have called for help. I should have pushed past that gate if that's what it took. Her tone sharpened. But this polite world teaches us to look away to mind our own business. She shook her head. And that silence cost everything. The studio air felt heavier now. Meg hesitated before continuing. 2 days before it all happened, she said quietly. Rob called me. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. Her eyes glistened. He sounded calm, too calm. He said, Meg, I just wanted to hear your voice. I wanted to remember your laugh. She lowered her gaze. I asked him what was wrong. Her voice dropped. He said, I think we made a mistake. I think we loved too much and protected too little. The room went dead quiet. Then Rob told her something that turned her stomach. Nick had been demanding the deed to the house. He believed Rob was hiding money from him. Meg swallowed. And then Rob said something that almost gave me hope. She exhaled. He said, I told him no for the first time tonight. I told him no. Her voice cracked as she smiled through tears. I told him, good for you, Rob. You have to draw a line. I was proud of him. She nodded slowly. I thought maybe he was finally taking his power back. I didn't know, Meg whispered. I didn't know that drawing that line would cost him everything. Her hands clenched, her eyes sharpened with anger and grief. I keep hearing people talk about excuses, about strategies, about spinning the story. Her voice cut through the room. Let me be very clear. The Nick I saw knew exactly what he was doing. Her words landed hard. He knew which buttons to press. If he cried, Michelle softened. If he hinted at harming himself, Rob reached for the checkbook. He turned their love into leverage. Meg's voice went cold. That's not confusion. That's not chaos. That's calculation. She paced the small rug as rain hammered the windows, each drop hitting like a heartbeat. And when love finally didn't get him what he wanted, she said, voice shaking with fury, when the money and forgiveness stopped, he broke the very people who built their lives around him. She stopped, tears in her eyes, voice steady. Rob Reiner gave the world hope. He taught us that love could conquer anything. Her voice softened, but the edge stayed sharp. The cruel irony is that the same love, endless, forgiving, unconditional, became the thing that destroyed his peace. It wasn't a lack of love. That's how their story ended, she said quietly. Her eyes glistened, not because there wasn't enough love, but because there was too much of it. A love with no limits, a love that couldn't say no, a love so blinding it failed to see the danger standing right in front of it. Meg turned back to the camera. No smile, no Hollywood shield, just her face stripped bare. Her voice trembled, but every word hit hard. I'm speaking now because I want justice, she said firmly. Not just the kind decided in a courtroom, though I pray Nick never walks free again, but justice for their legacy. I don't want Rob remembered as just another tragic headline. Her voice sharpened. I want him remembered as a man who fought, a man who tried with everything he had to save his son, until he lost himself in the process. She leaned closer. We have to learn something from this. Her tone cut through the room. We have to stop glorifying the self-sacrificing parent, the ones who give and give until there's nothing left. If you are scared in your own home, she said slowly, if your own child is hurting you, love is not enough. You have to choose survival, her voice cracked as emotion surged. Rob and Michelle didn't choose survival, she said softly, shaking her head, and now the world feels colder without them. For a moment, the woman who defined romance for a generation looked completely shattered. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I miss him, she said. I miss my friend, she swallowed. I miss knowing he was out there somewhere, making people laugh, creating light. Her eyes filled. And I will never forgive myself for driving away from that gate. She paused. Never. Then she looked straight ahead. But I promise this, her voice steadied. I will spend the rest of my life making sure people know what really happened, because they weren't just taken away, she said coldly. They were betrayed. The grief in her voice deepened. This wasn't a loss that fades. It lingers, it settles in your chest, and stays there. The studio fell completely silent. Outside, rain tapped against the windows, soft and steady, like the world holding its breath. The cameras kept rolling as Meg slowly sat back down. Her eyes drifted to the mug in front of her. The coffee was untouched, cold, the steam long gone. The confession hung in the air, thick and suffocating, impossible to ignore. Meg had finally broken the silence, but the echo of that truth was louder than anything she'd said before. The truth about the Reiner household was out, and it hit like a storm. The quiet darkness that had slowly swallowed two of Hollywood's brightest figures was no longer hidden. Behind those closed gates, the perfect image collapsed, revealing how thin the line can be between unconditional love and complete self-destruction. There was no clean ending, no comforting wrap-up, no cheerful goodbye. The footage faded to black on Meg's tear-streaked face. That silence said everything. Viewers were left frozen with one chilling thought. Sometimes the danger isn't hidden in the shadows. Meg taking to Instagram December 17th in tribute to the late director and his wife Michelle, who both died December 14th. Sometimes it's sitting right across the dinner table while everyone stays quiet, too polite, too scared, too loyal to speak. The aftermath was immediate, explosive. The world didn't just react to what Meg said, but how she said it. The illusion of the Reiner family, Hollywood's golden couple, the model of success, shattered overnight. For years, Rob and Michelle were the example of how to do it right, but with every word Meg spoke, that image crumbled, piece by piece, until only the raw truth remained. Within hours, social media erupted. Newsrooms scrambled. The story shifted from a shocking loss to something far darker, a story of control, silence, and betrayal. And Meg didn't stop there. In the days that followed, she released more. Notes, journals, details she'd locked away for years. Emails, texts, handwritten letters between her and Michelle. Each one peeled back another layer of a family quietly collapsing behind fame. One of the first revelations came in a statement she gave directly to Vanity Fair, refusing to let gossip twist her words. She described a weekend in the Hamptons 3 years earlier, Rob's birthday, the ocean calm, candles glowing, and yet she wrote, "The tea. Nessian never left the air. You could feel it like static in the air." That single quote lit everything back up. What was supposed to be a birthday celebration suddenly turned into another missing piece sliding into place. That was the moment people realized the cracks in the Reiner family image didn't appear overnight. They'd been spreading quietly for years, long before the public ever noticed. The sun was dropping low over the water, painting the Hampton sky soft gold and pink. Rob stood there staring at the ocean, and Meg remembered how small he looked that night, older, worn down, like the waves were slowly pulling parts of him away. Then he turned to her, eyes heavy, and asked, "Meg, do you think I failed him?" Her heart broke instantly. He wasn't talking about his career. He was talking about Nick. Rob told her Nick had accused him of caring more about movies than his own family. That single line cut deep. That was Nick's favorite move. Guilt. Meg explained it quietly. He knew exactly where to hit. Rob always wanted to be the good guy, the one who made everyone happy. Nick twisted that instinct. He made Rob feel like success was something shameful, like every achievement had to be paid for by giving in again and again. Meg's voice dropped as she spoke about Michelle. Michelle Reiner, brilliant, creative, full of fire, slowly disappearing. She used to paint the most beautiful landscapes, Meg said, shaking her head. Soft, dreamlike scenes that made you feel calm just looking at them. But the last time I visited her studio, every canvas was blank, every single one. Her voice trembled as she remembered Michelle's words. I can't focus anymore. I'm always waiting for the phone to ring, waiting for the next crisis, waiting for the next emergency call, the next demand, the next problem to fix. They lived in constant tension. You could see it in them, air faces, in their skin, even in how they stood. Always bracing, always preparing for the next explosion. Then Meg's tone hardened, frustration mixing with sorrow. And let's be honest, she said. Everyone saw it. Their friends, their circle, the people at dinners and parties, even people on set. You could feel it everywhere. Something was wrong, but nobody wanted to step in. We told ourselves it wasn't our place, Meg admitted. We called it privacy, she looked down, but really it was avoidance. Her words didn't just expose what was happening inside that house. They exposed the silence around it. We all knew, she said quietly. We just didn't want to admit it. Her next appearance was on a podcast, her voice stronger now, sharper. Anger and guilt had turned into fuel. The producers, the friends, the people who showed up every holiday, she said fiercely, we all saw it. Nick's outbursts, his tone, the way he spoke to Rob and Michelle. This wasn't just stress. This wasn't youth. This was control. But Rob was fiercely protective. Anytime someone tried to speak up, suggest boundaries, or real intervention, Rob shut it down fast. You don't understand addiction, he'd say. But this wasn't just addiction. This was a hostile takeover of a family. Meg's voice cracked for a second, then steadied. And we respected Rob's wishes. She paused. So, we stayed quiet. No one wanted to push too hard. No one wanted to hurt his pride. And while everyone stayed polite, the situation kept getting worse. The host stayed silent, letting the weight of her words settle. Then Meg shared the details she'd tried to bury for years. There was one night, she said softly. Just me and Nick in the kitchen. Everyone else was outside. Nick was calm, charming. That was the scary part. He could be charming, she said. Just like Rob, she swallowed hard. He looked at me and said, You know, Meg, my parents live in a fantasy world. She mimicked his tone. They think everything has a happy ending, but real life isn't a movie. At the time, she brushed it off. Teen attitude, trying to sound deep. But looking back, she saw it clearly. It wasn't sarcasm, she said. It was a warning. He was telling her he planned to break their illusion. The room went silent. The realization hit hard. The signs were always there, hidden behind charm, covered by denial. And now, with the January 7th trial date closing in, Meg's words weren't just echoing through podcasts anymore. They were echoing through headlines, through courtrooms, through Hollywood itself. When a reporter asked if she was afraid, her answer was cold and final. He took the people I loved, she said. There's nothing left he can take from me. That line sent a chill through everyone listening. It wasn't rage, it was resolve. Meg had already started building something new, a foundation in Rob and Michelle Reiner's name, focused on helping older parents facing manipulation or abuse from their adult children. It's a silent epidemic, she said, and Rob became the face of it without ever knowing. Then came her most haunting reveal. I went to the house yesterday, she told a reporter quietly. The tape is gone, but the place feels empty. She paused, searching for words. That home used to be full of music, the smell of garlic and tomatoes, laughter bouncing off the walls. Her eyes filled. Now it's just quiet. She walked into Rob's study. His glasses were still there, sitting right on the desk, untouched. The script on Rob's desk was still open to page 42. Everything felt frozen, like time had stopped mid-breath. Meg's voice softened as she remembered it. I sat down in his chair, she said quietly, and I made him a promise. She told him the story wouldn't end with what happened inside that house. It wouldn't end in silence or half-truths. It would end with the truth, she said. Raw, uncomfortable truth, the kind he was too gentle to say out loud. That promise became the heartbeat of everything that followed. Meg breaking her silence was never about shock value. It peeled away the glossy headlines and stripped the story down to what really mattered. When the flashing lights and tabloid noise faded, what remained was something far heavier. A family slowly collapsing from the inside. This wasn't just another Hollywood story. It was painfully human. It forced people to look inward at their own homes, their own quiet struggles, the things no one likes to admit out loud. Meg's confession turned Rob and Michelle Reiner's story into a mirror, showing how love, loyalty, and silence can collide in dangerous ways. By the end, it wasn't about spectacle anymore. It was about the damage that grows quietly behind charm, wealth, and closed doors. And the woman who once defined on-screen romance changed in front of everyone's eyes. Meg Ryan, the eternal girl next door, had grown up. In the weeks after she announced the foundation, the story refused to fade. Every major outlet wanted her: morning shows, late-night interviews, magazine covers. But Meg wasn't chasing attention. She was chasing purpose. She appeared calm, composed, but the pain still lived behind her steady eyes. This isn't about Hollywood anymore, she told one host. It's about how silence protects the wrong people. Donations poured in, letters followed, messages, voicemails, stories from across the country, older parents describing manipulation by their adult children, fear mixed with guilt, love tangled with shame. Meg read every single one. Every story feels familiar, she admitted, like I'm reading echoes of what Rob and Michelle lived through. The foundation, later named the Reiner Project, quickly became more than a charity. It became a movement. Meg partnered with lawyers, psychologists, and advocates. Together, they pushed for real protections for vulnerable parents facing emotional and financial abuse. That we need to call this what it is, she declared at a press conference. Not family drama, not private business. Her voice didn't shake. Abuse is abuse. The room erupted in applause, but beneath the strength, the weight showed. Each appearance seemed to drain her a little more, like she was holding grief together with sheer willpower alone. Reporters noticed she still wore Rob's silver bracelet, a small, quiet detail, a piece of him she refused to let go of. Then, on the eve of the trial, Meg released a short handwritten statement online. No warning, no build-up, just truth. Tomorrow isn't about revenge, it's about accountability, she wrote. Rob and Michelle believed in redemption. I believe in truth, and truth is how we honor them. Within hours, it spread everywhere. Old clips resurfaced. Fans shared lines from his films. Messages flooded timelines. It felt like the industry itself had paused, united in reflection. As the date approached, speculation grew louder. Would Meg testify? Should she? Some said her words could shift everything. Others said she'd already done enough. One thing was clear: her voice had already changed how the world saw this story. The night before court began, a photographer captured her walking alone along a Malibu beach, wind pulling at her hair, eyes fixed on the horizon. No entourage, no performance, just a woman carrying a promise she had no intention of breaking. She stood there for a long moment, staring out at the water, lost in thought. Maybe replaying that last conversation with Rob, maybe whispering one more promise to him in her head. Later, when someone asked what she'd been thinking in that moment, she answered quietly, I was thinking that love should never cost someone their peace, she paused. And I was thinking that if Rob were still here, he'd tell me to keep fighting. What started behind those closed gates in Brentwood had grown into something much bigger, an awakening. Meg Ryan had turned pain into testimony, silence into warning, loss into purpose. She wasn't just telling a story anymore. She was exposing a pattern too many people recognize, but rarely name. The morning of the trial arrived under a heavy gray sky, the kind that feels like it's holding its breath. Outside the courthouse, tension buzzed in the air. Reporters packed the steps. Cameras flashed like lightning as Meg stepped out of a black SUV dressed in a simple black suit. Her hair was pulled back, her face calm, unreadable. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She walked forward, steady and silent. Inside, the courtroom was already overflowing. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Pens scratched paper. Even the judge seemed to sense this wasn't just another case tied to fame. When Meg took her seat, heads turned. For a split second, she looked like the star the world once knew. Then she lifted her chin, and it was clear she wasn't there to perform. When her name was called, she stood tall, walked forward with quiet control, took the oath. Her voice didn't shake. I knew Rob Reiner for over 30 years, she began. I loved him like family. The room went still. He wasn't just a filmmaker. He was the most compassionate man I've ever known. She paused. But compassion can become dangerous when it blinds you. She spoke plainly about the calls, the warning signs, the moments she tried to help, and the moments she stayed silent. We all saw it, she said. We all knew something was wrong, her voice firm, and we all did nothing, including me. That admission hit hard. It hung in the air, heavy and unavoidable. Even the defense team looked unsettled. Meg took a breath and continued. Nick wasn't lost. He was in control. Her words sharpened. Guilt was a tool. Pity was leverage. He knew exactly what worked. The courtroom shifted. Unease spread like a ripple. He used love like a game, she said, and he knew he could win. Then her voice softened. Rob once told me, if I just love him harder, maybe I can save him. She looked down. But love doesn't save everyone. Sometimes, she added quietly, it hides the truth. When she finished, there was no reaction, no movement, just silence. Even the judge paused before speaking. What Meg had given wasn't just testimony. It felt like a reckoning. As she stepped down, she didn't look back. She didn't need to. Whatever pain, guilt, or obligation once lived there was over. Outside, the crowd erupted. Cameras surged forward. Voices shouted her name. Meg didn't slow down. She got into the waiting car and disappeared behind tinted glass. That night, her words played on every screen. People called her brave, honest, unflinching. Meg said nothing. Those close to her said she went home, fed her dog, and sat quietly by the window for hours, watching the rainfall. Because no matter how powerful truth is, it doesn't undo what's already happened. It doesn't heal. It only keeps the darkness from being buried. And that's where this story ends. Not with comfort, not with closure, but with clarity. Meg Ryan didn't just reopen an old Hollywood wound. She forced the world to finally look at what hides behind fame, loyalty, and silence. Her courage turned pain into warning, and her voice became something bigger than grief.